And welcome back to Open Your Eyes, a cool Wednesday morning, and we're now venturing off into our second topic for the morning. I see you watch me.
Because it's not so cool.
International Social Work Day. In to tell us all about it, we've got Mr. Evan Dakers, who is a social monitoring and evaluation World Bank project, CRIP, it says here, for climate resilient infrastructure project. That long. You guys have to break that down. Maureen Williams is in. She's the Deputy Director of Community Rehabilitation Department. And Andrew Herrera, who is the Community Rehabilitation Officer of the Community Rehabilitation Department. Guys, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
We are ready and set to hear all about this day coming up, because there's a theme that was yesterday. And there's a theme that we celebrated under. So let's venture off there. What happened? Why social work? Tell us about it.
Well, I could make a start.
No problem.
I want to first of all say that I have been a social worker almost my adult life.
Yeah.
And more or less, I guess you figure more or less how old I might be.
Yes.
So I'm in that category where the COVID-19 seems to be targeting. So
I know, we can have a whole conversation about that too.
But yes, the theme for Social Work Month is Social Worker Generations Strong.
Wow.
And the Ministry of Human Development, of which I spent almost 3 decades in, has decided that we would need to share with the public what that ministry has been doing, but more specifically, the area of social work, which is the bedrock of what that ministry does.
Yeah.
And they felt that since the theme speaks about generations, they wanted to have a kind of like a snapshot of at least 2 or 3 persons who can represent each of those, if you want to call them eras of social work. I would be more than likely the first era.
You sure?
I'm not that old.
But Mr. Dakers, it is so good to have you
Maureen
here.
and of course Mr. Herrera. So that's the idea, to highlight what social work is and its impact on the Belizean society.
Well, and I think that the theme itself kind of shows that people don't just become a social worker as a job. You commit to a lifetime of this type of work. And usually, I mean, people are very committed to this job. Let me just clarify though, what qualifies as social work?
Yes.
Who wants to take that one?
To you? Well, a social worker is a way of being. It's, there's degrees and things that you can obtain, but with all of those, you still have to have a passion for it.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So to qualify as a social worker can be anybody.
Yeah.
But you just have to have a passion for people, wanting to see people do better.
Yeah.
That's the best way I believe I can explain.
And I think many times people just think social workers are child protection officers. Like social workers are the ones who go in homes and investigate whatever terrible things may be happening there. But I mean, even here individually, you guys have different roles beyond what we know or what we call social in public, right?
No, the traditional role tends to be looking after families and children.
Yeah.
And it has evolved. And as I will speak a little bit later, I am a good example of not focusing only on that area, but I have now ventured into areas that, as you hear, I am dealing now with climate resiliency.
Yeah.
And you want to say, well, what
I
is that?
wondered,
What is that Dakers there, right?
Yeah.
And it has to do with people, as Mr. Herrera says. In every project, the bottom line is that the end users are people.
Yeah.
So you might be building a road, you might be building a school, you might be establishing a water system, but at the end of the day, the beneficiaries, the end stakeholders, those are the ones that you have to ensure that they are satisfied. And to know that, you have to be in constant consultation with them from project inception. It's easier to say than done, I could tell you that.
Oh, of course.
Because you have all these conditionalities, especially with some of those, what you call IFIs, international financial institutions, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, you have to deal with the people. So my job is basically to sensitize the end users. In the case of what I'm working on right now is a portion of the Philip Gorson Highway between the airport junction and it goes right up to the Mascal junction. And it's going to be rehabilitated and it's going to be built to a specification that will be able to withstand what we call climate change, right?
Yes.
To put it very simple.
Now, if we look at that's what you're currently doing, but you said
But I do other
spend
stuff.
over and you also
do
work
other
along with the is it HelpAge? I wanted to say Aging Council, but it's HelpAge, right?
I'm the chairman, yes.
I think what we're looking at is just how people across this country are engaged in this type of work, helping Belizeans at all sectors in life. And it's not easy work. I see social workers like teachers in the same light that you have to want to do it.
Yes.
Because it's not going to be where you just get up and do routine things. You're dealing with people. And that makes a difference. What called you individually to want to do this type of work? Why didn't you want to go in a bank and, rise the ranks or, any other type of work?
Yeah.
Actually, I got into this by chance. It wasn't growing up. I wanted to be a flight attendant.
Oh.
But I was young out of school, and a family friend, Mrs. Maureen Williams, suggested that I volunteer. At the time, it was Disability Services Division.
Yeah.
And so I did. And Miss Emma Boyton came one day. At that time, Mr. Golson was the minister. And she came around often and she said to me, Maureen, USAID is doing a scholarship program for Central American countries. And so I brought you the application and the package to have a look at it and see if you're interested.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I looked at it and I was going through the different programs and I saw human services. Yeah. And I read up on it. I said, well, this sounds interesting. I mean, it was 2 years in the States, all expense paid kind of thing, and I thought this sounds really interesting. I'm going to try for this.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. Ended up going to Massachusetts and thoroughly loving the program.
Yeah.
When I came back home, I thought, rather than staying, I said I'd come back home, and I came back with this idea I could change the world. And 31 years later,
You're still
at
in
it.
it.
Right
still
here.
at it. So it's just by chance.
Did you guys plan? Did you guys plan for the generational gap? Because Mr. Dakers has been in there for a number of years. You've been in there for a number of years, and then we've got somebody who is very young, who has been there for how long?
5 years.
Take 5 years.
Yeah.
So what got you into it? And I really love how Marlene segment her question, because it led me to ask you the same thing. What got you into this?
I grew up in some of the troubled areas, so I've seen a lot of things.
Yeah.
I could remember when I was younger, very young, when I used to pray at night, and I used to pray to be a superhero. Very young age, to be a superhero. I wanted cape, I wanted
Captain
to fight
Planet.
crime, I wanted to help people. And obviously, that's not possible.
Yeah.
But as I got older, I figured out ways how to do a little bit of it. And when I finished sixth form and I was going to do my bachelor's, I saw social work. And I said, okay, something here is calling me to do this. So while taking the program, because when you take the program, you have to do theory, you have to do practical. You learn that superhero is somewhere in there. The cape is somewhere in there. So I've studied social work a long time ago. I graduated a long time ago. And I took a break to do music. A lot of people would know me from my music. But interesting enough, I was called back into social work because I felt like I had more to do. I had more to give. I'm seeing my community, I'm seeing my country becoming depleted, especially the people, and I feel like I won't be good or happy with myself if I haven't given more than I know I can give more than I haven't given that.
Yeah.
So it's just a calling. I was called here. So that's where I am.
Let me see what your shirt says. It says, I was born to be a social worker, to hold, to aid, to save, to help, to teach, to inspire. It's who I am, my calling, my passion, my life, and my world.
Sweet.
You guys still feel that way all these decades later?
Well, I want to segue, if you don't mind, into why. Because, like I said, almost my entire public officer's life has been in this field. But surprisingly, when I got into the public service, it was as a clerk.
Yeah.
And I was placed in the prison department in back at Queen Street, the familiar the World Prison. I was back there as a second-class clerk. And I do believe that some of us are called to do certain things.
Yeah.
While behind there, I was exposed to all sorts of things. People who committed murder, burglaries, rape, you call it, it's there. But at the same time, I was able to see another side of some of these men and women, the human side. And there was a social worker at the time called, and God rest the dead, they call him Mr. Pole, Mr. Flowers. And he used to visit the prison and counsel some of the prisoners. And in addition to that, I am a member of St. Mary's Church. I grew up in Belize. I'm from Belize City, by the way, and I grew up in that Anglican situation. So he and I would speak sometimes, and he didn't tell me join. I just decided, you know what, clerk, I think this is not going to make much impact on the quality of life for people. I think I need to do something more meaningful. And it was from there I decided to apply for what was called the welfare the welfare officer post. And as we would say, the rest is history. That was in 1976.
Wow.
And I was placed in Cayo, in Coruscant, in Orange Walk. And along the way, I picked up experiences. I learned different cultures. Because one of the things that I've always liked about this job, and Maureen, I've been outside Belize City, but once you come out of Belize City, it's a different ballgame.
Yes.
And if you are dealing with people, you have to understand their cultures, and you have to understand also that they are looking at you, thinking in terms of a Belize City culture. So it has been quite an experience for me. I'm now in Bermopan, by the way.
Yeah.
But I've been all over the country, but the northern part of the country was where I spent most of my working life as a social worker.
Now, there's several things about social work I think that is worthwhile to explore. One, it's not the money-making business.
No, you're not going to get rich.
No, I need to say that because we've always known that. But it's also, it's a mentally challenging job because what you do is you work one-on-one with people. So there's a big problem and you kind of tackle them human being by human being, family by family. And so while you have that focus, sometimes we see what we've seen over the past few weeks or the past few days where there are still all these atrocities that may take place. And it goes from physical abuse to crime to people not being able to have their basic needs met. How do you cope with that? How did you cope with that over the years, especially starting off in welfare? You're in community rehabilitation, so you have young children who come in conflict with the law or their families decide that they're uncontrollable. And so you see these things and you're working with these people, but then at the same time, others are losing.
Well, let me just give my little 2 cents. The job, as you rightly said, is stressful.
Yeah.
And if you are not careful, you, meaning the social worker, can become so stressed that you cannot even deal with your own issues at home. So it's a balancing act. You have to be able to take care of yourself so that you can take care of other people's issues, right? Not all of us can do that, Marilene, and sometimes some of us maybe need to look for something else. Because if you are not able to accept and make the changes that you need to make, you can't change anybody, and people pick it up. And after a while, you will find that they will stay away.
Yeah.
Or they will start talking negative things about not only you, but your department.
Yeah.
So it's a task which constantly you have to be balancing yourself, and you have to do a lot of self-analysis. Not just the person, but not just the client, but you also have to watch yourself. Am I doing the right thing? Because that person is telling you whether or not you are doing the right thing. So it's a balancing act, and it has not been easy, but I think some of us seems to be easier to adapt to it than others. It's like nursing or police.
Or it's a learning curve too.
Yes. It was pretty steep for me in my early days.
So go ahead and share your insights. How do you?
I think Mr. Dakers is right. At least for me, from a personal standpoint, understanding that I can't change the world as I would want to. I'm working with people, I'm working with individuals, and so I take it that way. I focus on the people I'm working with, not on everything, because it becomes overwhelming very quickly. So if I have this family, these 5 families, then that is where my focus is. And then looking at it as a partnership, because I think sometimes we as social workers, a lot of times when you talk to new social workers, they will always say, because I want help. I want to help people, I want to help people. And sometimes they take on more than they need to. And it might be some sort of a complex, I don't know. But sometimes that happens. And for me, it has to be a partnership. And so your families, when I go in, families have to understand we're working this together. So I'm not doing this on my own. You will drive this because it's your life. You know, and I will support you. I will support you. So the decisions made will be our decisions together. We talk about things, what's going on, what are your priorities, where do you want to go next, look at what are our options, those kinds of things, so that you are not taking it on by yourself, because you can't do it and you will just overwhelm yourself. It's important to take care of yourself.
Of course.
Extremely, because that is also a lesson that you're teaching your clients as well. Taking care of yourself.
You gotta make sure your cup is full if you want to help others. So I mean, clearly you can mentor some of the younger generations. Talk to me what you've learned in your experience with social work so far, and how lessons like what Mr. Dakers and Ms. Maureen who said have helped you.
I've taken a lot from the older generations. I'm the youngest one in my office space. So there's a lot of things that they may mention that leads them to burnout that I try to work around.
Of course.
I can be creative. Of course. So some of the things I try to do is to work out. Music, speak to people. So I try to find myself in a way that I can detach when I need to, so that I can only deal with it when I have to. And I could put my full interest in it, rather than breaking down my mind and breaking down my brain, and then going to work tomorrow tired and not be effective. So for me, like, we learn it in school, and you have to put it to practice to work through burnout. So when I leave, I leave. I start to focus on my family. I start to focus on what I'm going to do next. I have to do that to clear my mind to come again tomorrow.
And that has to be so hard.
Creating
That's always the part that I mean, boundaries in general, we need to learn to set them for ourselves. But I think what I want to underscore is that it is not easy. If you have a child who comes in conflict with the law, and I'll use that example because I know you guys are community rehabilitation, and you start to dig deeper and understanding more of the social background that they come from, perhaps lack of parenting, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, developmental or learning challenges, many different problems all in one. And then you have to go home and shut that off. That's got to be hard.
You can shut it off,
It's not easy
but
to
you
do
have
that.
to compartmentalize, if I
Yeah.
could use that word.
Yeah.
And it's a juggling act.
Yeah.
It's a juggling act. And like I said a while ago, not all of us can do it.
Yeah.
So you have to help those who have challenges.
Yeah.
And I think the ministry, I assume now, when I was there, we didn't have much, but I think the ministry has to look at its own workforce and ensure that people don't get burned out.
Yeah.
And also help those who, for some reason or other, might not have been cut out for that kind of work. Because there are some people who really are toxic
Yeah.
in the sense that they tend to create.
It's like it can be two
Challenge.
extremes. You can
Yes.
not care enough, but you
Or
can also have
too-
like a, what they call it the
lenient.
Jesus complex. Like you feel like you have to
Yes.
save.
Well, like
have
what
to
she
save
said,
the world.
I
Yeah.
am want to save the world, and you can't
Yeah.
save no world. You save yourself first.
So what are the rewards that you get from it? You don't come out and publicize, well, you know, I made this family stay together and this child finished school and didn't get in trouble. I mean, you don't make announcements or press releases like that.
That's a personal
It's a
thing.
personal thing.
Personally, my personality has never been
I know.
outward. I tend to be a little bit more introverted.
But the work
But
itself
the
doesn't
bottom
allow
line,
for
the
that.
bottom line is that you feel that you have made a difference
Yeah.
Okay.
in a person's life. Yes, I need money. I have a wife and kids, and I have grandchildren now. But I still feel that because of what I did for Maureen, I can see Maureen making some headway now. Because at
And
first
he was
she
my
wasn't.
supervisor at one point, you know.
Oh.
I don't want to say
Okay.
that. So I get what you say satisfaction out of seeing somebody making progress.
Yeah.
Especially if I help him or her in terms of, listen man, do an extra class or two, or stop doing this because it's not working.
It's not working.
Yeah.
It's not working. Don't you see the lady vexed with you, the lady this, that, that. I'm just using some examples
Yes,
problem.
which,
yes.
which happens.
Yeah.
So I think the reward for me is to see people make progress, especially especially boys,
Yeah.
go on and turn their lives around, because I had to deal with those same youth that in conflict with the law. They didn't have any CDR at the time, so I had a combination of stuff to deal with. And you can see some progression in terms of they might have ended up at hostel, but then that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, the man, they ring me and say, Mr. D, you know, I get one good job. I am in the BDF or I'm in the police. And wow, I mean, I don't go up on TV and say that, but in my mind.
But it's all you need. It's your motivation.
Yeah.
He turned his life around.
Tell me a
Yes.
story like that. Tell me one that just really touched you, that maybe at moments when it really gets challenging, that's what you use as your driver to keep going.
There are several of those kinds of stories for me. I've been fortunate, in terms of the coping and stuff, I've been fortunate that I've had people, both personal and professional relationships, where they create safe spaces for me to vent when I need to vent, or to ask for help, to talk things out and those kinds of things. When I came in, as I said, with Disability Services Division. And there was a project with UNICEF that looked at community-based rehabilitation. So I would go to persons with disabilities and work with them and their families.
Yeah.
And that was really, really hard, because at that time, resources were extremely limited for that segment of our population.
They used to be shut in. Yeah.
And so watching people wanting more, but don't know how to advocate for themselves, and people not seeing their worth, was really hard. And just watching people giving up on them. And I remember we had this gentleman who had a stroke, and he really, they had said, this is it for him. He lived in Belama, and at that time our office was on Ferrell's Lane, and I used to walk every afternoon to go to his house to see him.
From Ferrell to?
From Ferrell's Lane to not Belama, but would be.
Okay.
And it took months to get him up to get him walking again. And within about a year, he had gone back to work. He was working at Brody's at the time. And one day I went into Brody's to buy, and there he was with a cigarette. Boy, I blew my top. Because I thought, I put a lot into you for this. And so I tapped him on his shoulder. I said, what are you doing? And he looked at me. And he looked at you like, you know, small children when you catch them, they do something. I said, I'm not happy with you. I'm not happy with you. And he said, I understand, Miss Maureen, I understand. But about 2 weeks later, he came in and he said, you know, Miss Maureen, I'm really, really, really sorry. He said, I shouldn't have put myself through that, and I shouldn't have put you through that, because this journey is my journey. He said, but you are an integral part of this journey.
Yeah.
And I sat there and, well, I wish you would start to cry and whatnot. But I felt good because he understood that I was doing this from a place of wanting to see him do well.
Yeah.
It wasn't about so much of the effort. That was my initial thought when I first saw it, because I knew right away, I think that came from a point of fear, because I knew what that meant. If he continued, we would have another attack, and chances are he was not going to make it. But for him to come in and to acknowledge, look, this is, you know, this is important, this is my life, and I appreciate
that acceptance
that
and responsibility
that you want to do this along with me. I felt really, really good.
Wow. That's a great story.
Very.
Tell me about one of yours.
Well, I have a special case where there was 3 brothers. They came into the system one by one. The first 2, the department lost them to gun violence.
Wow.
2 brothers. And the youngest one was going down the same path. But the mother kept on coming to the office and saying, my son is not listening. I need my son. It took some time to convince him to let's do something different. It started with finding out what he actually wanted to do. And he was like, you know, I just want a job. And at that time, our Belize Youth Challenge was just forming. So we said, this would be an opportunity. Let's try it and see if it will work. And he said, okay, we'll try it. And although a difficult road, he managed to successfully pass the program. Coming back into the environment now, he was met with the same challenges, but he kept strong. So I lost, because of dealing with other clients, I lost him for a bit. So he wasn't getting the attention from me like he was supposed to. So let me go check on him. So I went to his house and I asked him, where is? He said, oh, he's working. What? He's working where? He's working in Kikaka, and he's making this amount of money and this, and he's planning to do this and building this for me, and completely different individual from the time he walked in to now.
To know where he is.
And now when we call to check up on him, he's like, I'm a little bit busy, I have work to do. And to hear that type of conversation happening, that is gratitude in itself.
Nice.
My goodness.
You get them. You get them and they keep you going.
And those are just some of the experiences. And
we had one who passed out from BDF recently. And I sat there in that passing out ceremony and just weepy-eyed and thing, because I felt like this is my child. Because every day he was at BYC, and then he came out and he went to IT Vet, and he would pass every evening, say, Mama, still the hanging there, no, Mama, still the hanging, and I'm like, you got this, you got this, you got this. And so when he went into BDF, he was so proud of himself. And when he passed out, I sat there, man, I thought, this is what it's all about.
Came
This
a long way.
Just to watch him and to watch his parents.
Yeah.
And we, you know, it was just like the best feeling. Wow.
There is one that is actually a success story that is actually working with us, right?
Yeah.
At CRD, now.
Yeah.
So-
difficult.
Yeah.
And it keeps on happening, and I think that this is perhaps why having a day, an international day of social work,
Yeah.
where people become more aware of the work that you're doing, and also if they're interested, what they're signing up for, and just to be able to say, have a community say, thank you for what you do, and you know, we appreciate it. There are many results that take place across the country, but we don't always know what's happening. So we do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right?
Very much.
And all the generations. So we have previous supervisor, current supervisor, and you know.
I know they planned this. This is the plan.
Yeah, because the theme is generations, John. But thank you very
Thank you guys
much.
so very much.
Thank
That
you,
was
sir.
very, very touching.
All right.
And we hope to see you guys again sometime soon.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right.
I don't know about that. I don't sleep whole night last night, John.
Yeah.
Anxious.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about mental health during the pandemic. So please stay tuned.